So this deal then will create hundreds of thousands of jobs. There's never been anything like it. That the push from Donald Trump as he announced a new trade framework with Japan that places a relatively modest 15% tax on goods imported from Japan. The rate 10% less than the planned increase that had been due in a week. Trump saying as part of the deal, Japan will open up its economy to American autos and rice. Japan's Prime Minister saying the agreement will benefit both sides. Well, I'll talk to our business editor, Charles Pellegrin, in just a moment. But first, let's hear from Donald Trump.
I just signed the largest trade deal in history, I think maybe the largest deal in history, with Japan. And that was done with Japan. They had their top people here, and we worked on it long and hard, and it's a great deal for everybody. I always say it has to be great for everybody. It's a great deal. A lot different from the deals in the past, I can tell you that. But we're doing really well as a country. We're strong.
Donald Trump there. Well, let's bring in our business editor, Charles Pellegrin, then. The United States, Charles, and Japan striking this deal ahead of the deadline. August the 1st, it was set for by Donald Trump.
That's right. Tokyo was facing the threat of 25% tariffs on all of its imports on that date, with the U.S. president expressing frustration at the trade deficit with Japan, as well as with issues with market access, notably for U.S. agricultural goods. Japan was keen on finding common ground so as to avoid a tariff rate which could have lowered its GDP by a percentage point this year. So let's look at some of the main points of the deal as they've been announced by both sides so far. The new reciprocal tariff rate has now been lowered to 15% on all imports from Japan. The sector-specific tariff for auto imports has also been lowered to the same level, with Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba adding that the U.S. has also agreed not to impose any caps or limits to the number of auto imports from Japan to the U.S. There will also be a sizable $550 billion Japanese investment and loan package in the U.S. This is meant to help Japanese companies build up their supply chains inside the United States, thereby satisfying Trump's objective of bringing more manufacturing back to the United States. The Trump administration also says the deal allows for Japan to increase the amount of U.S. agricultural goods it purchases, notably rice. Japan, meanwhile, says it will nonetheless keep its tariffs on U.S. agricultural goods, as well as maintain a system which caps the amount of foreign agricultural goods on its market.
Perhaps the most important component of the deal, though, is the agreement on auto tariffs, would you say?
This will obviously come as a relief for Japan's massive auto industry, although it's obviously worse for them than whatever the deal was before Trump returned to the White House. That sector represents a quarter of all of Japan's exports to the U.S., and it's all one-way traffic. This was particularly irritating to Trump last year. For instance, Japan exported $55 billion worth of vehicles and auto parts to the United States, while meanwhile the U.S. manufacturers only exported $2 billion worth the other way. So one man's gain, though, is another's loss, it seems. In this case, U.S. car manufacturers have already expressed outrage at the deal, saying that Japan's 15% tariff on autos is lower than the 25% tariff in place for Canada and Mexico's auto industry, which are deeply integrated in the U.S.'s big three auto manufacturers' supply chains. Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba underlined that they've had the best deal so far when it comes to the auto sector.
We have agreed to halve the first additional 25% rate imposed since April this year on motor vehicles and automotive parts, bringing the total, including the existing rate, to 15%. We are the first country in the world to achieve such a reduction in tariffs on motor vehicles and car parts without any limits on quantity.
And Charles, this deal with Japan does come as well at the back of other agreements with Asian nations.
Definitely a bit of clarity for trade emerging in that region, which happens to be one of the world's manufacturing bases. In addition to the deal with Japan, a separate agreement was struck with the Philippines for a lowered rate of 19% after President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. visited the White House. Filipino leader calling the deal a significant achievement, even if it's just 1 percentage point lower than the threatened tariff of 20%, and saying that the Filipino market will be tariff-free for U.S. automobiles. Indonesia also benefited from a similar 19% rate, while Vietnam got 20%.
Take us through the markets. Are you reacting to it?
This has definitely boosted investor sentiment, notably in Japan, with the Nikkei closing considerably higher, over 3.5% higher. Even South Korean stocks getting a boost on optimism that a deal will be struck between Washington and Seoul soon. As you can see, the Kospi up 0.4% there. Chinese stocks, the Hang Seng in Hong Kong up over 1% higher, rising as Scott Bessent, the U.S. Treasury Secretary, said he'll meet with Chinese counterparts for a third round of talks next week aimed at extending a tariff truce and widening discussions. And let's finish by also looking at Japan's largest automakers, the shares of Toyota, Honda, and Nissan, all surging after this agreement. You can see Toyota there, its share closing the session over 14% higher.
Charles, thanks very much. Charles Pellegrin, our business editor for you here on France 24.